Hello, namaste to everyone. In this video today we are going to learn one story. The title of this story is The Selfish Giant. Every afternoon on their way back from school, the children would play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children stopped their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. It means that daily the children, after they returned back from school, there was a garden, giant's garden, where there were many trees, flowers. The flowers were blossoming so that it looks like the stars in the sky. And the spring came in their giant's garden so that during that time the birds sat on the trees and they sang the song. After listening that melodious song of the birds, the children became so happy. Instead of playing, they listened the music, which made them calm, and they enjoyed a lot there. One day, the giant came back. He had been visit his friend. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. What are you doing there? He said in a very heavy voice, and the children ran away. It was the garden of the giant. He was not there so that the children would get chance to play. But one day when the giant came back from his friend's home, he saw the children playing in his garden. He did not like the children, so he threatened the children by saying, "What are you doing here?" in his happy voice. When the children listened the giant's happy voice, they were afraid of him. That's why they ran away from his garden. The giant built a high wall around the garden and put up a notice board, no entry. He was very selfish giant. Then the giant, he did not like to allow any children to enter in his garden. So he built a high wall around the garden, and he also kept the notice board where he has written no entry to anyone in this garden, because the giant was very selfish. The poor children had nowhere to play. They would wander around the high wall and talk about the beautiful garden inside. They had nowhere to play. They became very sad. They wandered, they moved here and there, but around the garden, the giant built the high wall so that the children could not get entered in that garden. And they remembered their pastime where they enjoyed a lot in that garden. How beautiful the garden was. They talked. How happy were we there, they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. It means that all over the country the spring season came. When the spring season comes, all the trees, they, the flowers of the trees blossom. Everywhere there seems the birds, and the birds blossom and becomes the flower, so that it becomes so beautiful. Every trees, every flowers they blossom, so that everywhere there were a spring season. But still in the garden of the giant, it was winter. That's why the birds did not like to get entered in the garden of the giant, because there were no any children. I cannot understand why spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant. But the spring never came, nor summer. Autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. The giant was so selfish, so that the nature also did not give him other seasons. She provided him only the winter season. That's why how long it was, it's too long that the spring did not come, said the selfish giant. In other places, spring came after that, summer came, autumn, they gave the golden fruit, but in the giant's garden, it was still the winter. One morning, Giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It was only a little bird singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seems to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. One morning, when Giant was lying awake in the bed, he heard some lovely music, and that music came from a little bird. The bird was singing outside his window. After a long period of time, he heard that music or the sound of the bird, and that made him so happy. It was the most beautiful music in the world, because after a long period he listened that the sound of the bird, the singing of the bird. I believe spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of his bed and looked out. Then, when he heard the singing of the bird, then he thought that the spring has come, so that he jumped out from his bed and he looked out to his garden. He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall the children had crept in. They crawled in, they came inside the garden, and they were sitting on the branches of the trees. On every tree there he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossom. It was a lovely scene only in one corner. It was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around it, crying bitterly. When he looked outside, he was surprised that From a small hole, the children entered by crawling in his garden, and then in every trees, the small children, they said, so that the trees became very happy because after a long period of time, the children returned back in the garden. That's why they blossomed, and it was a very beautiful sign seen there. But at one corner, which is farthest from that side, it was still winter. There was a little boy who was crying because he was too small. He could not climb the tree, and he wandered here and there and crying bitterly. The giant's heart melted as he looked out. He went downstairs and upon the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giants coming. The selfish giant's heart melted when he saw that. When he listened, or when he saw the boy was so crying, the giant's heart melted. He went downstairs, he opened his front door, and slowly he went to the garden. When other children saw him, they became afraid. They were frightened of him. That's why they ran away from the garden. But the little boy did not run because he was crying. Due to that, his eyes were full of tears. That's why he did not see the giant coming. And the giant went to him and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it. The other children, when they saw that the giant was not selfish any longer, came running back. The giant went near to him. The giant took the little boy in his hand and he put him into the tree. When he touched the trees became so glad that they blossomed at once. When the trees blossomed, when the flowers were bloomed, then the birds came and sang in that garden. This scene was seen by the children. They found that now the giant was not selfish, so they returned back and started to play in that garden. The giant said that it is your garden now, little children, said the giant, and he took a great axe and broke the wall. Then he told the children that it is your garden now, and he broke the wall. From this, what moral story? What is the moral of this story? What we learn from this story? Life is better with generosity and kindness and not selfishness. It means that we should not be selfish, we should be kind to others. In the given story, the giant became truly happy only after he became kind to the children and he allowed them to play in his garden. This is a nice story about the selfish giant. If you like this video, please share among the friends. I will be back with other stories and other materials of English in this channel. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice day.